All right, after weeks of looking forward, because all we're talking about is draft on the Pats Interference podcast, we're going to look back here for 15 Off the Field with Doug Kyed to his days touring with a band. And you and I have very loosely talked about that. I don't want to say loosely, but like in this almost 7 years of knowing you, I know certain things about maybe allegedly stealing snacks from certain rest stops, different cities you've been to. You reference like a domestic tour, which implies that you did an international one. I don't know anything about your days playing in a band, your years playing in a band, what it was like, where you went, what you played. So I just thought this would be a lot of fun to kind of fill the folks in on stuff that I don't even know as someone who works with you.
Yeah, that's fair. I started playing in bands when I was in high school, and we had like varying degrees of success. But after my senior year of high school, which was 2004, for people keeping track of my age, we did like a 1 week tour of the East Coast, of like the Northeast, and we weren't like big enough for people to be like booking us. So I was the person in charge of emailing places to see like if we could play certain venues, certain dates, whatever it was. And it was like very haphazard. I had never done it before. And there was a few dates that we still had when we were leaving for the tour that were empty, but I knew that shows existed in the places that we wanted to play. So this is getting like right deep into it, but we just like showed up to those places and were like, hey, we're Actions and Objects, can we play your show or whatever? Or like I think we even said like, hey, we're on the show, and they had to be like, oh, we didn't know this, and they're like, let us play anyway. But we were definitely much more successful locally around, southeastern Massachusetts, but when we ventured out, weren't quite successful. So those were my first days of touring, when I had like basically just turned 18 years old. I had bought a van. Shout out Chris Mara from the Ames Curve, bought his old van, and we just kind of went out. The furthest we got that time was Virginia Beach, Virginia. But then went to college, and during like before my senior year, I think it was, I had joined a band called Bear Trap with a kid that I had known since I was like 14 or 15 years old, whatever it was. He was singing in it. It was like his main thing. It was his like baby basically, but I was certainly down to play guitar in it. So before my senior year of college, I think we did just like a week or two. Or maybe it was after my senior year of college. Sorry, this is like boring, but I'm trying to figure out the dates here. I was in school.
Well, look, you started with, we just showed up and told them that we're on the list. You are not. This is not like going to a club and saying, I'm supposed to be in that VIP booth. This is, we're on stage, and you need to clear out time for us and space and energy and outlets. Like, and that's just how you got in. And it was called what? Action and Objects?
So Actions and Objects was the band that I was in high school. Okay. I was in a band like shortly in college, but that didn't really pan out. But yeah, so I think it was after my senior year of college, because I still had to do some summer classes to like get my degree or whatever.
Yeah, you're still in summer classes, I hear.
Yeah. Yes, I'm still trying to get that degree. But I had to miss school for it. Like I had to miss college to do this, which my parents were not very happy about. Still wound up getting the degree, but like one of those classes was John Rook, who's the PA guy at Gillette Stadium. He was teaching a sports journalism class, and I had to be like, hey, I'm going to miss like 2 or 3 classes because like we're going down to Florida in a band. And they were all very kind about it, but that was like my first, that was Actions Objects was kind of like a pop punk band. Bear Trap was like a hardcore punk band. And it's just generally much easier to tour in a hardcore band than it is in like a pop punk band, because it's a lot more like DIY, do it yourself ethics, that kind of thing, where like people are always having shows. It's easy to hop onto shows, do all that kind of stuff. I had nothing to do with the booking of that. But I think that was with a band called Pledge. We had to share a bunch of members, all piled into our singer's van, made it all the way down to Florida and back, did all that stuff. And then the next year, when I was no longer in college, was when I was basically touring for like a year or two straight, essentially, whether it be like small East Coast tours. The last one that I did was a full US tour, which was 2 straight months, went, across northern part of the United States to Washington, down to California, and all the way back. Did that whole thing. And I think the next tour that they were going to go on was in like Central America or South America. And at that point, I was like, I should probably get a job. Like I should like I have a college degree, like, and I think my parents were kind of pushing me to stop doing this. There wasn't like a future to like make money in it. It was basically just stalling adulthood. Um, but it was a lot of fun, and nothing like yeah, I mean, certainly it was a fun time. I've seen the entire country. I think there's only like 2 states that I haven't been to, after doing all of this. But in order to like make money on the side, I was also selling Yankee Suck shirts at Red Sox games, and also like Bruin shirts at Bruins games, Celtics shirts at Celtics games, which is another thing that like just a lot of people involved in that like hardcore community did that. That was like the job that you did either in college or outside of college, to make some extra money. So like I wasn't doing that bad money wise while also touring in a band, having a girlfriend who's now my current wife, and yeah, it was a wild time in my life. I'm glad that I did it.
I do remember asking you about, I think we were in Green Bay, and we had stopped for snacks, which is like some sort of story about the van. I want one good van story before we get out. It was something about like, how did you know Jen? Like you guys kind of grew up near each other. I was like, she's a saint. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna go tour for 2 months, go across the country. There might be some roadies or groupies, or I don't really know what's gonna happen. And like that's different time in your relationship. You don't need to say anymore, but just a lot of trust and a lot of faith for like a summer that should have been probably to date the best of your life. Like, what are the flashbulb memories of just 2 months on the road seeing the United States?
I remember like vividly having like phone conversations in like the Las Vegas desert with Jen, like walking through parking lots in Arizona, because the full US tour was also it was it was awful weather in New England. I think it like rained that entire summer. This was 2009. But everywhere else in the United States was just hot as hell. Like it was like 105 degrees at 11 p.m. in Arizona. Like Las Vegas was so hot. The van that we had did not have air conditioning, and if you rolled down the window, it was like a like electric window or whatever it is. There was no guarantee that it would go back up. So none of us really wanted to risk that with the like with water or anything else, rain getting in there. So all we had was like I was in the front seat almost the entire time in the passenger side because our singer liked to drive. So all I had was like one of those like triangle windows that tilted towards you. But when you're driving through Redding, California, it's 100 degrees outside. It's basically like someone pointing a hair dryer at your face as you're driving down the road. Like you're not getting cool from it. You're just not like sweltering in a van. I wound up losing, I think, like 20 or 30 pounds on that tour as well, just because like we
Wow.
weren't eating a ton. We were like playing shows every night, which you're like you're working out and sweating. You're sweating in the van, you're sweating everywhere else. So I think I left that tour at like 190 pounds and got down to like 160 pounds or something like that. But yeah, there was also yeah, that this wasn't on that tour, but there was one tour that we did with 2 bands. It was us, Energy, and this band called Debaser, who were all in one, I think it was like a 15 passenger van, but we had all of our stuff stacked in the back. And then essentially like everyone just had to like sit in the rest of the van. There wasn't like seats. It was just kind of open or whatever. And we were like so proud of ourselves. It stacked up all of our gear, done all this stuff, like guitars on there, everything like that. And suddenly there was like a short stop, and we're all sitting in the back, and all of our gear just fell onto us. And quite honestly, we're lucky that no one got like seriously injured, because bass cabs are like 150 pounds or something like that, 100 pounds. But that was a memorable experience from my touring days as well. Also, our gear fell out of a trailer at one point, and I lost my guitar, which was a traumatic experience that I still don't like talking about.
Okay. All right. Then I won't ask you about it.
Yes.
The How many times did you arrive unannounced on this like more professional US tour? Was everything planned by then?
Everything was planned by then. Um, I will say that I didn't really know anything about the booking process, because our singer just handled everything like that. And like God bless him, Micah Satley, he did everything like but I knew at the time that we would just like jump on other tours. So like I think that he was very smart about where like when we were booking a tour, he would see that like two other bands were already on a path. So then he would kind of jump on onto all of those shows. But like they were aware that we had done this. But that I think that that was kind of his one of his methods in getting booked is that like he would book most of a tour, but then if there was like a little patch where we wouldn't be on places, then he'd kind of jump on other stuff. But some of the drives were pretty crazy. Like we would have to do, like 10, 12-hour drives, something like that. Like East Coast, it's easy because, and even Midwest, it's easy because all those cities are so close together. But once you get past like Nebraska, like getting from like Colorado to
Kentucky.
Idaho or like to Utah or like Washington or something like that, they're just these crazy long drives that you would usually have to do either like at night or first thing in the morning. And I'm usually the person who likes driving, but our singer was just like, I think he was kind of being a hard ass on that 2 month tour where like he just wanted to do every single drive. So there was only one patch of that entire tour that I drove, and it was only in like from one spot in Florida to another spot in Florida. Otherwise, he drove that entire time. And like I said, God bless him for doing that because that was a lot of driving over a 60-day span of time.
When you said initially that there was only one part that you drove, and this is how like sophomoric my mind is, I ran to the scene in Dumb and Dumber where Harry Dunn goes in the opposite direction, like Colorado, and they wake up and he's sitting there ass crack on the road, having gone 8 hours to waste all this gas. It's like, oh, Doug's not driving anymore.
No,
What was the best and worst show you did on that long tour? Or if the shows were similar,
man.
what about the venues, like places that you would go back to just to see a show, let alone play again?
California was cool. We played with some bigger bands. We played with like a band called Rotting Out there, so that was a cool show. Specific shows are hard to think about. Washington was cool. We played in Bremerton, Washington. And we played a few shows in Washington, which was nice because I was born there, so I got to see one of my friends I was like growing up with and everything like that when we were out there. But we played Spokane. We played Bremerton. I think we played near Seattle as well. All of those were good. There were some bad shows, not only ones that we played, but also just like because like it was kind of a rotating cast of members in Bear Trap where like me and Mike, our singer, were pretty permanent. But sometimes for these tours, we'd either have to like borrow members from the bands that we were on tour with, or just like find fill-ins, whatever it was. And on that 2 month tour, our drummer was not like the most dependable drummer. So sometimes things would go sideways. I remember a singer being very mad at a show that we played in Birmingham, Alabama, which was not to that many people, but it was still like, wow, that was probably our worst set of that tour. The one show that stands out that was the weirdest was in, I think it was Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I think that's a real place. I hope I'm not making that up.
Sounds right.
Like most of the time when we were playing shows, it was like the same type of kids, like kids who liked hardcore and were coming to a hardcore show, whatever it was. But like, I think that Eau Claire, Wisconsin just did it, like couldn't sustain that big of like a hardcore scene or whatever it was. So it was like juggalos who were at that show. It was like new metal kids. It was hardcore kids. It was punk kids. It was like any type of alternative culture kid that you could possibly think of was at this show. And it was like in a kid's basement or something. And I was like, I don't know if this kid's parents even know that this is happening. Like playing a basement show in hardcore is not that uncommon, but like this was for kids that were like, we don't know what's going on here, so we're going to play the show and then just like bail out of here because it was bizarre. So Eau Claire, Wisconsin, not sure if I'd go back there, but yeah, shows in Denver were really cool. Shows in California, shows in Seattle. I think part of that is just like being, far away from home and playing shows where people know your songs or people like go off for you and all that kind of stuff. We also spent a lot of time in the Dallas Fort Worth area that on that tour because the other band that we were out with for a lot of the time was this band called Decades that was from either Arlington or somewhere like that. But they were really good friends with this band Power Trip, who we played a few shows with on that tour. And we actually wound up staying in, I think, their bassist and guitarist house for like a 2 or 3 day stretch. Just like while we were basically stationed in that area, like playing a few shows. But like Powership went on to have a ton of success, and we're like a massive band. Their singer sadly tragically passed away a few years ago, but it was just a cool experience to play with a band that like I right now like genuinely love, and knowing that we, you know, stayed with them, made some connections with them, and played some shows with them on that tour.
This is all too cool. All right, wrapping up. I want to end in the obvious place, and I don't know the answer to this. What is Olivia's knowledge of your it's like touring in a band? What does she like? How much can she conceptualize? Does she know? Does she ask? Like, what does she know about this? How much would she have in the last 15 minutes if she listened to this clip?
I think a lot of it would be new to her. She knows that I've played music. She knows that I've been in bands. She knows I know how to play guitar. But I think these are things that I'll tell her about when she's probably in middle school or high school, when she's a little bit more aware of the world. I will say that like just being into like punk and hardcore music, I think that like some of the music that I listen to that is like heavier or whatever, that has like screaming, is just like much more normalized to her than it would be to a normal 6-year-old who would be in the car being like, what the hell are we listening to right now?
Maybe even
Whereas,
me. Yeah. No.
yeah, exactly. Or with you on some of these road trips that we have to go on. But for her, I'll be like, oh, what do you think of the song? She's like, it's good. Like she just thinks about it as like, it's like, yeah, there's Taylor Swift, and then there's, you know, Bane or whatever it is, like some other
Bear Trap, yeah.
Bear Trap, exactly. There's not a ton of videos that exist of me playing live, so I have shown her a video or two of me playing live, but anything that was from high school only exists on like VHS tapes at this point, and I think there's like 1 or 2 Bear Trap performances that are out there on the internet somewhere.
Okay, maybe I can tease one out of you for next episode if this comes back up, because I feel like we could do 50 off the field, 5-0 as opposed to 15, but we've gone over 15. I appreciate you, buddy. That was a lot to learn, and I have more questions. But look, I can bug you almost any time now, so we'll save those for private.
The shirt selling is a whole other 15, like off the field type of thing. That has just as many stories as playing in a band.
Awesome. Can't wait. Thanks, Doug.